Greetings, outcasts, freethinkers, narrative questioners, dot connectors, and genuinely open-minded and outright curious inhabitants of whatever realm we exist in at the moment. You are about to embark on another free first-hour episode of The Melt. If you find yourself wanting to dig deeper and have the desire to join the conversation during our monthly Melt meetups, you might want to consider becoming a monthly subscriber. For as little as 3 lousy Babylon hokey-pokey tokens per month, you can have access to full-length, early, and exclusive episodes. Just visit patreon.com/themeltpodcast or click the link in the episode notes to set the process in motion. It's simple, painless, and very well might make you feel tingly inside. So without further ado, please enjoy the show!
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
During these peculiar times, some people have come to see their fellow man as a potential health threat, or someone who, by their actions, look to be associated with a particular political party, and therefore someone to be shunned. Some have become embittered by fear and distrust. But there are those of us who have taken these times to brush up on our critical thinking skills and connect some glaringly obvious dots. Find others who share the same values such as self-awareness and personal freedom, and examine our priorities and adjust our lives accordingly. We have seen all the more how fear is an easily wielded weapon by the few who control what the masses get to see and hear. We have all witnessed how many people seem to be more than happy to rigidify their tribal affiliations and ignore truths if they conflict with their party line rather than dare to have a grown-up conversation where there might be a remote possibility that their perceptions could be called into question. A part of me feels bittersweet about it all, but a larger part feels more alive than I've ever felt. If nothing else, this is an exemplary situation showing us just how different our realities can be simultaneously. It is also showing us what we're made of. Who are the survivors, thrivers, and adapters, and who are the followers, swallowers, and victims of their circumstances. One of our favorite survivors and thrivers is today's returning guest, Dr. Christiane Northrup. Hunter starts off the conversation by asking Dr. Northrup if one of her publishers, Hay House, is publishing her books in light of her current take on the COVID hocus pocus.
Yes, but what they can't do, and let me be, very, very compassionate here with my publishers. So it's Random House and Hay House. And what happened, starting in 2020, I was revising Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, doing a 5th completely updated thing, and then the following year, Wisdom of Menopause. I wanted to kind of bookend my 2 biggest contributions in the medical field. Mm-hmm. But then there was COVID. And what happened with Hay House is they got so much flack, and the same with Random House. They couldn't support the stuff. They couldn't put out newsletters. So they're still a partner. They help a lot with the newsletter, and I mean, with the website, drnorthrup.com. They help with that platform, all of that. And then behind the scenes, we're all good friends, but they cannot, in the big Hay House audience, send out any kind of marketing for any of my products, including all the stuff that I did with them in the past. Goddesses Never Age, my Dodging Energy Vampire online course. That, because I said to Patty Gift down in the New York office, is it that bad? And she said, oh yeah. And so it was so demoralizing. But, by the same token, in my yard, I can't put out a sign for the candidate I would like to have win the election, because if I do, my neighbors who have a Black Lives Matter and a Ukraine flag flanking our mailboxes will lose their minds. And that's what we found is what we would call the woke mob. Is and that started for me right after I testified against 72 mandated shots in the Maine legislature. And that's when suddenly I'm attacked from every place had always been doing. But that's when, you realize there was collusion at the highest levels of government, big pharma, and media to silence all voices. And so I went from, I like to say to people, one of Reader's Digest's most trusted people in America in 2013 to one of the Disinformation Dozen. And I know, and my friend Karen Staley, a country singer from Nashville, award-winning, was up here for what turned out to be the last public appearance with Robert David Steele. And I got up on stage and talked about falling to grace, because by then I had met Kevin Jenkins, Clay Clark, the Reawaken America tour, and all of these patriots who I never knew existed, because I was pretty much, on the East Coast, yoga teacher, Waldorf school, organic food, the bi-coastal thing. Yeah. And then you realize, wait a minute, all of the people who can see this tend to be in the heartland, in the middle of the country. Yes. There are plenty of us on the coast, of course, but we get really shouted down. But even, again, we have peninsulas in Maine that are all, I went down to Harpswell, which is kind of nearby, and it's still in our blue county. But there were American flags on every telephone pole, all the way down the peninsula to Cundy's Harbor. And people had huge Trump signs on their barn. And I thought, where am I? This only took me 15 minutes to get here. So it's like that, isn't it? Yes. And I think we all find that. There are, like, my backyard is a very specific ecosystem because it's on a tidal river. Right. And so I can grow things here that you can't grow 2 miles inland. Right. And it's like that, I think, that we've all found our little ecosystems of like-minded people who are live and let lives, and let's all be in this together. But at the same token, you've got the podcast, so you've got that ecosystem. Yes. We started Maine Stands Up, so we have 14 communities of people who just get together to tell the truth. Because if you don't get together, you think you're crazy. You think you're the only one. Yes. But I was the only one for so long that this didn't bother me all that much.
Sure. What do you think Louise Hay would be saying in all of this?
Louise would be kicking Hay House's ass to the curb. You know what they asked me early on? And God love them, I get it. But they said to me in the summer of 2020, I think 2020, 2021, they said, you need to come out against QAnon. And I barely knew what QAnon was. What had happened was right in the beginning, because I was up to my ears in vaccine mandates.
Right.
I was doing all these podcasts with people who were really interested in medical freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first ones to reach out to me was Sean. I can't remember his last name. And I did not realize Sean was one of the number one Q translators
Mm-hmm.
in the world. But he was calling because of vaccine information for his 2 little boys.
Right.
And so this connection got made that I was QAnon. And then I learned there's no such thing as QAnon. There's only Q, which is a high level security. And there's Anons, the people who, decode different messages from, I guess, the channel 4chan. I wouldn't know how to interpret a Q drop if it, came in my third eye in the middle of the sleeping. However, I do absolutely now, not then, but now I follow some of those people. Like one of my very favorite is Martin Geddes. He has done amazing work on this, a British guy named Martin Geddes. And then the Devolution series by Patel Patriot.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is the only thing out there that makes sense. That and the book of Revelation. That's the other thing. Yeah, I've become someone who's, I thought, I better learn the Bible. I mean, I read the Bible in college. I took Old Testament, New Testament as a course,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't read the Bible as, oh, okay, so this is the Canaanites and they're the Caesarian mafia. And here's the Christ consciousness line. And this Christ consciousness line is the way out of the Babylonian debt slave system,
Right,
that the Caesarian mafia has been carrying out for thousands of years. And the book of Revelations is just, that's for them.
Mhm.
That's where they're going. But, things became so real, out in front of the UN in New York. They put this beast statue. That's right out of the book of Revelation. I mean, you should just Google that, anybody, or don't use Google. I use Brave because even DuckDuckGo has now been compromised.
Exactly.
But you can't believe this stuff. But you know how it is. It's hidden in plain sight, like the caduceus,
Mm-hmm.
the medical thing. It's the snake. Remember when Brian Artis came out with the snake stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone lost their minds?
Yes.
All I knew was this. All right. The Blessed Mother is always shown with her foot on a snake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the Pope's viewing room, and anyone just go look it up. The Pope's viewing room is a serpent head.
Yes.
It's got the 2 eyes. So when Brian, and the caduceus is the snake.
Mm-hmm.
So when Brian came up with that, and by the way, I've seen the meticulous science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's very meticulous. I knew that he was right on the mark. And he said, I will prove this. And then we know that the CRISPR technology that they used for this included derivatives of snake venom to make those cuts in the DNA. So the truth, though, is, for everyone out there in La La Land, is cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely.
They cannot accept how horrible it is. They can't accept it. Then what if you get, at the beginning of the whole thing, this is how my life works. I watched Out of Shadows official
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, Good Friday.
Mhm.
Yep.
I listened to David Wilcock back then. So, we all thought, oh, this is what it's going to be. Well, we did 2.5 years later. And then I listened to all of Fall of the Cabal
Mm-hmm.
with Janet Ostergaard.
Yep.
And the truth of the matter. And then we had Jim Caviezel come in live in Tulsa, Oklahoma
Yep.
in April of 2021. And we all thought that the Sound of Freedom movie on rescuing sex-trafficked children,
Mm-hmm.
we thought that was going to come out immediately.
Right.
Here's what I know now. When that movie comes out, we will be well on our way to the Great Awakening. It'll all come out. Then last night I learned something, and I haven't checked this out, but this would be fun to check out, everybody. And that is Walmart, which used to be a big center for sex trafficking, is now going to be the place where they have the supplies So go to your Walmart and see if there are these big, huge gray containers. And friends of mine did that in New Hampshire. And they said, there they were. There they were. So
Wow.
lots going on. A lot is going on. And, I found out that Maine is deep state central. I mean, the entire coast of Maine is, we've got the Klaus Schwab Young Global Leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and they're, in every position of power in our state.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the Rockefellers are all of Mount Desert Island. And then we've got Islesboro, and that's all deep state. And they had the Camden, Davos 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all here. But I like to think, I go to a church right now, East Point Christian, down in South Portland,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a hashtag for Greater Portland. And the feeling that you get is they want to redeem Greater Portland, where there's so much darkness and evil, with the gospel. And at this point, I'll never be a fundamentalist to anything. I can't do it. I follow Alex Collier, the Andromedan, contactee, all that. However, I think this idea of having that Christ consciousness and the gospel, which contains so much truth, and understanding that you are the church, it's not them out there.
Exactly.
And true Christianity can, in fact, redeem a place, can lift it up. So there are, these prayer warriors, they go out between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m., 2 a.m., pray with the people coming out of the bars. I mean, it's just beautiful, beautiful work. And it's all about love. So much of the way people have been brought up with Christianity, like my mother, she was trying to work her way through girls' Catholic school and was accused of painting the Blessed Mother's toenails, which she did not do, because she was not that. If my mother were alive today, they would have done the transgendered thing with her, because she was such a tomboy. But anyway, they made her kneel down in front of the cross, for 30 minutes a day until she repented. That's not love. She didn't do it. And after a week, she told the priest that was it for her and the Catholic Church. Otherwise, I would have been brought up Catholic. And the Catholic faith with the saints and the rosary, it works for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I would never pull the rug out from under them. But we all know the Vatican is a business.
Absolutely.
And they've got more secrets in the basement and more art that they've stolen and every other thing.
They're their own city-state.
Vatican City. Yeah, they're their own. Well, we know the whole planet's been run by Vatican City, City of London, and
the Jesuits.
Washington, D.C.
DC.
With the top Jesuit there, Fauci.
Yes.
Exactly.
Truly. I mean, I don't think you have to look too hard for the Antichrist. Just go with that little man. Yeah.
So what was
did you listen to Tucker Carlson, his thing on Fauci?
No.
Oh my God. I mean, it is so worth finding. When Fauci said he was going to step down, Tucker did the most theatrically hilarious thing. He goes, never before have so many women clutched their breasts and reach for Xanax in their expensive pocketbooks. And he said, 46-year-old Cornell trained lawyers with weak husbands were falling to their knees. The most privileged group in the world, just lost the only thing they've ever worshipped. Fauci.
Oh, God.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
The figurehead, the high priest.
Yes.
So the last time that you were on the Melt, it was late January 2021. What has happened? What has transpired since then? Do you think we're swinging out of this? We're going deeper into this transhumanist dystopian narrative that they're trying to get us to believe? Is there more hope? What's your take on where we're at?
There's
right now?
infinitely more hope, because more and more people are seeing it every day. So there's two things. There's more hope. It's getting more and more fun because more people are seeing it. And on the other hand, what has happened to people who've taken the shots is horrific beyond anything you can imagine. So suddenly, you've got a population that see 750 top athletes in the world drop dead on the court, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we find that normal, but they freak out about getting a cough or a cold. We've managed to brainwash the population. There's something I want to just say, loud, and that is this.
Mm-hmm.
Why in the world would you ever, and I mean ever, why would you ever have a PCR test? Why would you ever test yourself for COVID? It's the dumbest thing you can do. Don't ever test yourself for COVID. I never have, not once. And because COVID-19, the syndrome
Mm-hmm.
is from a bioweapon. The PCR test, all it measures is some strands of DNA.
Right.
And it's so non-specific. And as you know, the cycle threshold at which they spun the stuff, that they magnified it, was about 40 to 45, which would create almost all false positives.
Right.
So that was our first lawsuit in Maine, was April of 2021, asking the governor to tell us what was the cycle threshold of the PCR test that you used. Now, what was happening back then also? Then we had the Medicare, Medicaid lawyer, whistleblower, come to attorney Tom Rentz and show that there were 56,000 deaths within 3 days of that shot. And all that data is on rents-law.com. So anyone who wants the data, it's right there. Then we had another suit out of Louisiana, and the frontline doctors helped with that and all this stuff. So one after the other, the prosecutors have not been doing their jobs. They've just not been doing their jobs. And so, it wears down the public when there's no justice. But you have to realize always, always, that how do you make a diamond out of carbon? More heat, more pressure.
Exactly.
How do you do anything? How do you get a bigger muscle? You put a heavier load on it till you get muscle tears, and then the muscle gets more resilient and bigger. All of humanity has been in this birth canal with a very dysfunctional labor, but we're right at the time to push. So here's what I'm thinking. 30% of the population will never wake up. You will find them. I'm going to give you an example. One of my friends was in a car with her dad. She's an adult, taking a drive in Maine. He had the sunroof open, and you know how that is. It makes your ears feel like they're going to. So she said, "Dad, could you put the roof?" He goes, "Well, if I do that, I'll have to wear a mask because you're not vaccinated." Okay. This guy's a doctor. He's a doctor. So there's going to be that group, right?
Yes.
That group is so far away from the truth. They're never going to get it. So I see that group, 30%, mummified in New York City apartments. They'll find them 100 years from now. They'll be like the catacombs underneath Paris, where they will just be desiccated corpses with 3 masks on.
I was just going to say,
right?
with 3 masks and a shield on.
Yeah, and a shield on. Yeah. Maybe in one of those, those
hazmat
bags.
suits.
So that's going to be 30% of the population. And then there's going to be 30% of us that are seeding humanity with normal DNA. Which is why, I'm nearly done with an unvaxxed dating site that I'm doing. But I stopped it. I've got it done, but I stopped it because I saw today that Slack, an interoffice app that you use, just stopped their the business for WND, which is a conservative news group. And they just pulled their account. So I do not want to do this so that it's just going to be pulled, that any platform we're on will just be pulled. And here's the deal. They are running for their lives, but they never stop. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath. They'll call you 20 years later. How are you doing? Thought I'd come to see you. Really? You don't remember that you left me bankrupt and you don't remember? Oh, no, and then a normal empath like us goes, we doubt ourselves. We doubt our sanity because we can't even imagine acting like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Can't even imagine it. So that group will continue until they're dead. And I think many of them are dead, actually. I think Biden's dead, tell you the truth. That's an actor. I feel that way.
Yeah.
And this whole thing had to be orchestrated the way it is orchestrated ever since Kennedy was shot. And the 200 generals came together and said, we're going to have to do something about this. And, Alex Collier talks about the regressive species, and they're off the planet now, whatever they were, the hybrid grays or whatever they were. They're off the planet. So all of the off-world regressive species that go around and eat up different galaxies through AI, they're off the planet. Humanity is evolving quickly, but their minions are still here.
Right.
Waiting for the next instruction, but they're realizing, wait a minute, I don't have the connection to the higher ups who are going to protect me. I'm on my own. They don't know what to do. A psychopath in peril, as it were. Or, as David Nino Rodriguez says, a fighter that's down is really dangerous. So we're right there. But on the other hand, we are moving so quickly now toward the awakening, the awakened state. We've reached critical mass and we're beyond it. So the news is good for the people who've had the DNA altering experimental biologic. There's only, with that group, I mean, once you know the extent of that carnage, it's beyond a human's ability to imagine. And they're still recommending boosters.
Yes.
Still. So the last figure that I just got today, just for the US alone. Now remember that the VAERS database is less than 1%.
Right.
Less than 1% of all injuries. But I wrote an article today. So as of August 26, 22, the number of deaths, remember it's only 1%, was 30,605. And they're also messing with the VAERS database.
Right.
They keep messing with it. The number of injuries, and we're not talking soreness at the injection site. We're talking blindness, seizures, blood clots.
Right.
1,394,703.
Jeez.
Now that's just the United States. That doesn't count. In England, they've really kept amazing statistics, and it's horrific. I think children are like 2,000 times more likely to die. And the American College of OBGYN, the American Board of OBGYN, is still recommending to pregnant women that they get the shot, even though if you get the shot in the first 20 weeks of pregnancy, you got an 80% miscarriage rate. And there's something even more horrific, and that is the babies that are born in the women who had the shot and then didn't miscarry. They're giving birth to babies that have a deletion in the immune system of the baby so that the babies are getting cancers. Unheard of. So there's going to be this whole group in the middle that have awakened and said, what have I done? What did I allow to have happen? And let's go back to this because it's really important. You might know right now, there's sort of this ongoing controversy between Matthias Desmet and Peter and Ginger Bregan, right? So Peter and Ginger wrote, "The COVID predators, we are the prey." And Peter is a psychiatrist who's been the conscience of psychiatry. He got rid of the prefrontal lobotomy. So he's been at this for a while and he understands psychopathy. He is arguing that Matthias Desmet, who is a professor of psychology in Ghent in Belgium, is blaming the victim with his mass hypnosis, mass formation thing. The truth is, he isn't. Some of us saw this coming from a mile away. Some of us have had relationships with one psychopath after another, one narcissist after another, men, dried husks along the side of the road because they loved women who weren't smiling and they thought that they could make her happy. That's our human homework. We have to learn to value ourselves more than giving our lifeblood away to them for narcissistic supply. So let's remember, the predators go hungry the minute you can see it. Exactly. And the minute, that you get the big picture and say, get thee behind me, Satan, and bring in Archangel Michael and all the rest. So it's also our job as humanity to stop being victims. If everybody at the beginning of this, if every nurse in our hospitals here had just stood up and said, we're not doing that, exactly, it would have gone away.
And psychopaths really prey on empaths. They really seek out. It's almost like they have a radar for someone that they know that they can vampirically suck the life out of.
Yeah, that's this one. Dodging energy vampires. Yeah. It's like it's a hand in glove relationship. So what we have to do as empaths, we have to find out where we're giving ourselves away in order to learn to earn love. And many empaths are told, you better, for dating, you're going to have to learn to be attracted to someone who's not as exciting as you're used to, because the psychopaths are very exciting. They're often really good looking, right? They're bigger than life. Uh-huh. And you keep thinking, it's like being in the Hamptons in the summer with all of the celebrities. Yep. You kind of want to, put your nose up against the glass until you've been there enough, like me, and you go, oh my God, I'd rather be in the kitchen with the cook.
Exactly. That's usually where I ended up. Yeah. With the wait staff, right, because they're real people.
It takes a while to learn. I sent my daughters to Ivy League colleges. Brown and Yale. That was $500,000. In retrospect, that wasn't such a hot move, although they got out before the real woke indoctrination. For a while there, they still do the, call the person who can't decide if they're a male or a female, they. I won't do it. I will not do it. And, don't get me going on the gender affirming hysterectomies being done at Boston Children's Hospital. Oh. I think there's a special place in hell for those people.
Absolutely.
I really do. And I'd be happy to send them there for a while.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because I'm actually in school right now. I'm in university. And one of the first questionnaires that I had to fill out was, what are your preferred pronouns? And I wrote under the other box, I said, I don't subscribe to that.
Oh, thank you.
I just don't.
I wondered what to do for that, should it ever come up.
I think the thing that's so frightening is that if you I'm 54, if you take a 20-year-old going into university for the first time in their life, they're in the mode of like, well, I want to fit in. So I want to do what I believe that the group is doing. And at 54, I'm not really interested. I'm the pushback. I'm the one who is the questioner who's saying, why? Why are we playing this game? And my professors love it.
I'll bet they do.
Because most of them are used to someone who's just trying to get the circle filled in perfectly. And I'm like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we perceiving this as education when it's really about indoctrination? And I'm not playing that game. So I think it's interesting that you said that about your daughters, because I think some people are doing what Pam Popper talks about, which is just going along to get along. And they might not really resonate with that, but they don't want to get in trouble.
Well, there's a lot of that. This is funny that you should say that. I met a guy that I'm working with on a dating site, a venture capitalist. He's sending his son to a very special school where they don't have any electronics. It's a very standard classical education. And two professors, a married couple from Harvard, brought their teenager to be in that school. And he said, my God, you're Harvard professors. What are you doing bringing your kid to this school? And they both said, you can't even imagine the students that we have to teach. They are so soft. They are so incapable of critical thinking that we never want our own child to end up like the students that we have to teach. That's Harvard. That's Harvard. So what's happening is, and this is the astrology of the moment, by the way, is the old Cancerian, the old Capricornian system ruled by Saturn, the city of London and all of that. It's all crumbling. It's all going to go away because Uranus is doing its thing of what's new, what's next, and crumbling the old structures. The myth is that Saturn was castrated by his son, Uranus. So things are biblical, but they're also astrological, and it's all meant to happen. I don't know if you remember, I followed Cryon, channeled by Lee Carroll, for years. And he said, if we made it past 2012 without blowing ourselves up, then we're on the ascension pathway. And as you know, from Operation Looking Glass, there's no way to stop what's coming. There's no way for the deep state, dark cult, whoever they are. It's toast for them. And there's nowhere to go. There's no other planet for Nancy Pelosi and all that gang. There's nowhere for them to go. And that's the way it is. So we have to look at, I believe in terms of those who are vaccine injured or who have had the shot. And by the way, the vast majority of them don't even know that they have myocarditis. And for those who do, there's a 50% death rate within 5 years. Remember when Fauci goes, well, it's mild and it goes away. No, it doesn't. And the other thing, in April, you asked me where we were in April of 2021, we began a study called My Cycle Story, because we were hearing all these women bleeding from being around those who'd had the shot, and they hadn't had the shot themselves. Little girls with vaginal hemorrhaging. Yeah. So we began to collect it. We had a 6,000 person database. We found out that a very significant portion of them were having what's called decidual cast shedding, the entire inside of the uterus kind of falling out in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
In the world literature, there were 40 cases. That's all that had been reported. In our database of 6,000, we had 296.
My God.
Yeah. Now, that was just one thing. So now we have a whole working group with Brian Hooker of Children's Health Defense. We've got Jim Thorpe, maternal fetal medicine, who is suing the American College of OBGYN, the American Board of OBGYN, and he's documenting what's happening to the placenta on these people. It looks old, and it looks like it's time for the baby to be born prematurely, intrauterine growth retardation. He's doing all that work. So at least we have now about 3 different publications on that stuff. And, Fauci had said, well, it's just a little disruption and more study needs to be done. It's like, not a little disruption, dude. It's not a little disruption, but there's institutional blindness to what's going on because there's a gag order on all the physicians. So, here's just an example. I've heard this hundreds of times. A call will go out in one of our groups. I have a relative currently in the ICU at Cedars-Sinai, and and I want them to have the Paul Merrick protocol to get over sepsis.
Right.
And I don't want them on remdesivir, and I'd love them on ivermectin and thiamine and vitamin C and all of that. And visitors are not allowed in the hospital. Can someone help me? First of all, don't go into the hospital.
Exactly.
Don't go into the hospital. What we did in our Maine Stands Up group, We got oxygen concentrators. We got homeopaths. We have people who will go and sit with those who got the bioweapon. We kept a lot of people out of the hospital. I mean, those are the gas chambers of this century.
Exactly.
Period. End of story. And I just heard a story I couldn't believe, which was a guy went in for an ulcer and pain every night at 3 a.m. Oh, and his COVID test was negative. Not that it means anything, but for the hospital, at least, it meant something.
Right.
Sure.
Every night at 3 a.m., a nurse would come around with a dose of IV medication. He'd wake up. What are you doing? What is that? Remdesivir. Run, death is near. 3 nights in a row. One of the Nazi nurses of the Fourth Reich comes in to kill him.
Oh my God.
You can't do this. But you see, people are going to have to get over the panic.
Yeah.
The panic of, I've got to go to the hospital. Now, I've had people go in, they needed total hips or they needed knee, and they've been fine because the orthopedic surgeons seem to know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Fauci is a little disruption.
Yeah.
Right?
He sure is. He sure is. So anyhow, so we had the My Cycle story. We've got all that. I believe that there will be things that can be done to restore human DNA. There's too many people who are just plain innocent. What if you're 5 years old?
Exactly.
What if you're 11? I mean, come on. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. Safe and effective. Lying.
Yeah.
Muriel Bowser down there in Washington, D.C., signing a bill that 11-year-olds can have a shot without their parents' consent.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, part of the bill is don't tell the parents.
Yeah.
That's fucking criminal.
Sinister.
It just
Well, they
is.
are. Well, they absolutely are. So, we're doing some interesting work. We've got, David Martin, and we've got Stan Graham, and we got a group for prosecutenow.io, and we're finding, well, we have to find sheriffs who are willing to do their job.
Constitutional
Doctors aren't. They're all
sheriffs.
going to lose their licenses if they do. We've had 3 in Maine who have lost their licenses just for giving exemptions or for prescribing ivermectin.
Jeez.
We just had Kathy O'Brien on the show. The episode will come out in a few weeks. And we were talking about how people like Pelosi, for example, these are just low frequency predators.
Yeah.
They really are. And I think that the pivot that's happened is that people that are operating at a higher frequency are capable of this onslaught. And I think you're one of those people because you went from being one of the America's most trusted doctors to being on the Disinformation Dozen list. How has that affected or influenced your daily life other than like social media being blocked on social media or deplatformed? How do you navigate the world? Like, do people treat you like a pariah?
Or ask for your autograph.
Or ask for your autograph?
Well, it's mostly positive, but I had a couple experiences that were the only 2 experiences. I mean, obviously, people are going to say stuff about you, like my poor daughters. They had to go through, what's happened with your mother? How can you not say something about what your mother's doing? It was hard for them.
Yeah.
And my youngest moved to Florida with her 2 little kids, with my grandchildren, to get away from it. And that had to happen because they were in a neighborhood where they would have been pariahs. She was not going to vaccinate her kids, period, with anything. And they weren't going to wear masks all the time. And, little kids want to fit in and be like others. So she sort of had to become a political refugee, and she's very happy down there. So I had to go through the grief of, oh my God, my only 2 grandchildren are now gone in Florida. But I helped start Maine Stands Up in December of 2020 because I thought this is insanity. And so I had 20 people come over to my house and we put a sign up, peaceful protests. And so I suddenly began to have this group of people from all walks of life who got it. And so what happened as a result, and then going to Clay Clark's Reawaken America tour, I have become fast friends with Kevin Jenkins, Ann Vandersteel, Clay Clark, all these people, Sherry Tenpenny, Larry Palevsky, Lee Merritt, Carrie Made, all these people are now my inner circle. And then a bunch of people that we're doing with the pilots on Prosecute Now. And so my social life, my day-to-day life is kind of busier than it's ever been with the right people, because I'm not having to hide any part of who I am to fit in, because I've always been kind of, pushing the envelope, a little bit of a black sheep. Well, oh, what do you mean? You're 50 and you've never had a mammogram? No, I never have. I know a lot about that, like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't go to the doctor. Why would I? I know what they're selling, so it's now I'm with my people. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They found, well, there's a lot of very isolated people, which was part of what the cabal wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, solitary confinement. I guess Simone Gold said it was the absolute worst part of her being in prison. She's apparently out in 10 days, and that was a travesty. But my life has become, here's what it was like. Okay, so I was, and you probably heard this story, I was deeply in love with this guy who was a professor emeritus of public health, an epidemiologist who'd worked with the WHO. God has a major sense of humor.
Wow.
So I thought the relationship would founder on the rocks of vaccines, because I thought if you're a public healthy, that's all you got.
Was
as far as I can tell.
Was it Ted Ross? You can tell us.
No. And he was a professor emeritus and all that. And I showed him all the data when he's the guy who told me, go up to Augusta and testify. You know more than they do, and they're not that bright. Go ahead. So imagine, if you will, that I trot up there to Augusta with my testimony completely vetted out by a renowned professor of public health. Okay. I do that. He can't believe what happened next, all the canceling and all of that. But there's another big old story there. And he died in April of 2020. He was a death with dignity. He thought, again, I know too much about what's really going on. He thought that he had ALS. I knew he didn't have ALS, but that was, and he couldn't be here right now. It would have made him insane to see what happened, what was being carried out against humanity in the name of public health. So that happened in April of 2020. And that's when I began. All during that time, I was doing a kind of a ministry. I was compelled on Facebook and Instagram every night. I do another little message. Yeah. And all these people have come up to me and said, oh my God, you kept me sane. I never would have been where I am now. But then, of course, that all got shut down. Yeah. So, I do stuff on Telegram, and now I got a Substack finally. But so that all happened. And it's almost like God said, all right, you came here, everything you've done, it's been nice, but this is what you really came for.
Exactly.
This is it.
And maybe that divine intercession of him dying was that he's more capable of helping you now with his energy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you know me. I mean, I talk to him through mediums, and it's like, he's not gone. I'm that person.
Thank goodness.
And this is one of the problems with the Christians. All that stuff I know about astrology and tarot and all the rest of it, they think is the devil, and they're wrong. They're wrong. Who told them it was the devil? Because every tool that you use for self-knowledge so that you don't need an outer authority is good. Now, can negative spirits come in?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. I think that's what Burning Man is. I think that ayahuasca, that stuff can be, and mushrooms, that can be amazing. Maybe once. Yeah. I've never done it. Maybe once. But you're opening yourself up to all the realms. And the astral plane is as deep and as dark and as horrible as it's as deep as heaven is high. And
Yeah.
you don't want to mess with that stuff. You really don't.
And once again, it's low frequency
Yeah.
energies that are looking for some permeable force that they can penetrate. So you really have to have your energy
Yeah.
clean and aligned
For
and
sure.
shields up when you go into those realms. You can't be someone who's compromised.
Don't go there for recreation.
Yeah, I don't think
No.
it works. I think it's dangerous to be messing with that stuff if you're not centered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot now, notice how many people now are into plant medicine. That's another thing. I mean, I think that we need to decalcify our pineal gland, get rid of the fluoride, do all of the stuff. And remember that our 12 strands of DNA are coming back online. I just had a long talk with Sandra Rose Michael, who developed the EE system scalar technology, which is sort of like a med bed. And she said it's bringing light back into your DNA. We are light species, but not the false light of luciferase. And
Right.
that there's luciferase, SM104, I think it is, SM102, in all of the shots. And that's why they have those black lights for street lights. They can tell, who's had the thing. I mean, it's so bad, but I believe it's going to turn on a dime, absolutely turn on a dime. And probably, I don't know, Bull Polney says September 24th. Who knows? We don't know. So our job is like a woman who is fully pregnant and desperate to deliver the baby. And I know that space because they would beg me, induce me, please induce me. It's like, no, because you have to understand you don't know. It's so much easier to have the baby in. I know you can't stand it, but it's so much easier to have the baby in. So we've got to be very patient, but I believe it's going to turn on a dime.
What is September 24th?
That's what Bull Polney, do you know Bull Polney?
No.
He is a guy who follows biblical cycles in finance. Check him out. He's still on YouTube. It's fascinating, just fascinating, because he follows these cycles in the stock market and with gold and silver and all the rest of it. So he says Rosh Hashanah, because I think that's the beginning of the high holy days. And then the Khazarian mafia just took over Judaism. So anytime you mention that, you're accused of anti-Semitism. Well, come on, guys, get your history straight. They're not Jewish. Oh, so a lot is going on, and life is better. For me, life is better than it was before. It's very clear. I don't spend any time on things that don't move the needle or bring me joy. So if it's someone in the past, I would have just done something. Oh, they'd kind of like to see me, but they're kind of in the narrative. I don't have the ability now to be around someone who's like that when I bring up the shot. There's no point in it. It's a total waste of my energy. I'm not going to play nice to make them feel better. So it's better for me just not even be with them. I'm always shocked because I was with one guy I knew very well, loved him. And he said, so what have you been doing? So I start to tell him what I've been doing. And he goes, stop, you're freaking me out.
It goes back into that cognitive dissonance, because it's so horrifying to imagine that people who are of this predatorial race, what we might call the powers that be, it breaks people's minds to think that they could be the largest human trafficking organization in the world, that they could be involved in this mass genocide of a global population. People don't want to think that because they have to go to work tomorrow. And so it becomes too much to go, how am I supposed to go and live my consensus reality life when there's, this giant force that I can't, how could I possibly fight that?
Well, you can fight it with your own vibration. That's the thing. If they
Absolutely.
just knew it was kind of simple.
Exactly.
Well, and these people don't spend a whole lot of time calculating all of the things throughout history that have led up to this moment.
Yes.
For us, it's not a big surprise. For these people, they have a hard time making that mental leap and putting themselves in the position of somebody who would even be capable of conceiving that sort of a plot, so that's sort of a plan. So I think part of it is because they believe in the goodness of people, because they don't think that, certainly something like that wouldn't be afoot.
Well, as someone that experienced early childhood trauma, early childhood sexual trauma, I have this sixth sense where I can read people and I pick up on energies and I can walk into a room and read the room, because it's a defense mechanism that I was equipped with from infancy. And I think if you haven't experienced that level of trauma as a child, then it's easy just to kind of think, well, that's a movie and that's not real and people are nice. And it's, people in politics have your best interest at heart. It's easy to buy into that. But if you have that other ability, it's easy to pick out the predators in the room.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, instead of if you're me, let's see if we can heal them.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
And what I've realized, Dr. Northrup, is that some of those people don't want to be healed. They don't. They really don't. Because their ego, that narcissism that you were talking about, is the thing that is so deeply embedded and so deeply entrenched in their personality that if you started to peel those layers back, it would destroy them.
Yeah. Well, I do think when the wake-up call comes, you're going to see a lot of people who are probably going to off themselves. Like they won't be able to take it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I also hope that if they find a one-on-one relationship with God, with the force that created them, that comes through them as them, because God's in us, they'll be okay. And there's nothing that can't be healed. And I really, truly believe that. I know that to be true, but you've got to be willing to have that relationship, to take the first step.
Exactly.
And we'll see who can do it. I remember a patient, she was at a 12-step meeting in New York City, and there was a big broker CEO type at the 12-step meeting. And he's having real trouble with the first step. We admitted we were powerless. Number two, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And a woman with just one tooth, she looks at him, she goes, "Well, can you believe that you ain't God?" I mean, could you just get that one down? From the mouths of, the lowest of the low comes sometimes the biggest wisdom.
For sure. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, you said that you had a couple of new projects that you wanted to discuss. Was one of them the dating site?
Yeah, one is the dating site, which will be live soon as I figure out. I think it'll be stealth. I think it'll be one of those things, like Bernie Madoff, but good. Like Bernie Madoff was always, I think I can get you in, right? Because I had a friend out in the Hamptons, and they said they were never grand enough to get into the Bernie Madoff situation, right? They never, only so this is going to be like that. And I have to figure out how to do it. And someone suggested to me that I do it like Grindr, because Grindr, there's no social media ads around. By the way, I have a funny story about Grindr. Okay. I have a gay friend, and he goes, "Yeah, I use it. I use it to talk gay men out of getting the monkeypox vaccine."
Oh my God,
He said it's my ministry.
That's fantastic.
So I'll figure that out, and then we'll probably get the thing launched by October, I would say.
Cool.
Because the goal there is to save humanity, and literally to save natural, normal human DNA. And then eventually, you see, we need it as a platform to have summer camps, theater groups, because the people I'm working with, one of the guys has 3 little kids, and he said, I can keep them safe in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
But what do I do when they go out into the world? Because you can't determine where your kid is going to meet other people.
Sure.
So there's that. And then there's another thing I'm working on that I really am excited about, and it's called prosecutenow.io. And this is with a group including David Martin,
Mm-hmm.
Sean Rice, and some others. And what we're doing is a 2-prong. So we have the lawsuit
Mm-hmm.
out of Utah, the Griner lawsuit. And if anyone goes to prosecutenow.io, they can read. There's a couple things. One, you'll see a place on the website where you can put your story if you are vaccine injured.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a place over to the right. It says, are you a health professional?
Right.
We created what's called the COVID commonalities. It's an affidavit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 22 things that every nurse, doctor, healthcare provider who can see the truth would agree on. In other words, we didn't go into Tom Cowan's and Andy Kaufman's do viruses actually exist. We didn't go there.
Right.
I suspect they're right, by the way, but you would wipe out Judy Mikovits's entire career if viruses don't cause things. Let's not go there. So we did the 22 COVID commonalities, and we have 160 exhibits. And exhibits are references, they're proof. So you go, and if you're a healthcare provider, you download this thing, and it's in common law. So it's the affiant, the person
Mm-hmm.
who's doing the affidavit, is on the land, not in the maritime. So you fill in your name and your position and what county you're in
Mm-hmm.
on the land.
Right.
And then you print it and you get it notarized. You get it notarized because a notary is an official of the court.
Right.
So they've got jurisdiction. Then you scan it, and then you upload it onto the website, and then you read it out loud. And we have a place in the website where you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, we've got 4,000 affidavits, but it's this commonality. Now, there'll be a place, this is just the beginning, there will be a place for if you have very specific knowledge. So let's say that you're a mortician, an
Mm-hmm.
embalmer, and suddenly you're pulling out clots that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And we know from the work of Ryan Cole
Mm-hmm.
and also Mike Adams
Mm-hmm.
that these clots are not like anything that's ever been seen before. They have amyloid, and they're really weird. So you would have a very specific affidavit that you could do and put it into evidence. These will then be used and to take to the sheriffs or the attorneys general who will actually prosecute. Now, remember, the vast majority of prosecutors have been compromised. So it's been very, very hard to get justice.
Mm-hmm.
So we are filing in both criminal and civil court. It's the COVID thing with the shots
Mm-hmm.
is ongoing felony homicide. So we're not, you know where we've been for 2 years, you have no proof that it was the shot. Well, how many parents have been going through that with autism over the past 30 years?
Exactly.
The autism rate in 1970 was 2 to 4 every 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's now 1 in 44.
Well, hello there.
What's your name?
Name.
I thought that was our private routine.
Oh, should we start over? The world is a better place because Dr. Christiane Northrup is in it.
Yes, you should wear headphones because then you'll know when you turn your head, you can't hear your voice. Your lovely, soothing voice.
Oh, I
Maybe just
never
put
do.
one in. Just
Okay.
put one in.
All right.
But you're absolutely right. She is a great person through and through. She's a tome of wonderful information, a great what is the word I'm looking for? I hate when I'm on mic, especially during a podcast, and I don't feel like I can articulate what I'm trying to say. But my go-to would say she's a warrior, but that's kind of
she's a force of nature.
She is, but she's got such a great sense of humor. She's
She
not
does.
bogged down by all this heavy stuff that's going on. She just takes that, turns it around into resilience and perseverance, and I really admire that.
Yeah, I think that she has been put on this earth for a purpose, and she is living that purpose every day. And I understand what that must be like to be in that state and then have friends or people that you love say like, hey, can you click it down a notch? Because I've experienced that before. And sometimes it's hard to kind of bifurcate your brain and put that side, like the awakened side, to bed for a moment and just be normal, in quotes, and just, be able to kind of tune out. And I don't think she tunes out. And I respect that because I don't tune out. I just keep my mouth shut sometimes. when I have other things to say. I do.
Well, you don't ever need to do that for me. But she's in a unique position, too, which I find very interesting, to have the background that she's come from on Oprah's show and all these documentaries, specials on TV, network TV, all these books. I mean, she's really been in the spotlight for a lot of her work and her research. And then to be brave enough to come out and tell it like it is. I mean, she goes there. And
oh my
how?
God. Hell yeah. I love when she said that she thinks that Biden's dead. That was wild.
She doesn't hold back. She mentioned the med beds, and that's something that is people who are into the secret space program and the 20 years and back. That's a term that's used around there too. She brought up, interestingly enough, I brought it up to you just earlier this evening, the Project Looking Glass.
Yes.
I was almost going to say something, but she was on a roll.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's just so aware. And so, I mean, she's just got a lot of tools in her toolbox.
Yeah. I just absolutely love and adore her. And anytime I can speak to a human woman and feel understood and heard and have that person bring this lightness to this very, dark world that we are observing, because I don't think we're living in it. I think we're observing it. I think that is so helpful. And, she's been through some shit. And being able to talk to her about her children and how her children have navigated this time and how difficult that was for her, that's a layer that you don't always necessarily get with someone, is that normally we hear, their experience and what they're going through, but to hear how this has affected her kids and her grandchildren is really powerful, and probably the best thing in many regards that could have happened was her younger daughter getting the hell out of Maine and, moving to Florida. That sounds like that's actually been a positive, in the short term, it might seem like a negative because they're taken to a different part of the country, but it's a positive because her daughter doesn't have to vaccinate her little children.
Exactly. And cool that she's putting up a no-vax dating site up.
Oh, I love it.
Fantastic. And it made me think of, she was talking about the vax mandate for people in the airline business. And it made me, who's the name of the Irish woman that was going to, Cahill? Dolores Cahill?
Dolores Cahill.
Wasn't she going to start her own airline?
Yes. I don't know I haven't kept up with her, so I don't know where that's at. But again, there's so many layers to what we talked about, when she was talking about Dr. Andy Kaufman and Dr. Tom Cowan and their opinion that vaccines don't exist and how that would negate all of Dr. Judy Mikovits's work. And, I think what's great about it is that these are people who are critically thinking, they're asking questions, they're not accepting it's not even the consensus reality. It's more like what this story that is being told is. They're not going there. And I just think that's really powerful, because on both sides of the fence here, we have to be able to ask questions. We have to be able to examine and explore all narratives and not feel like, oh, I can't talk about that. I think it's important.
We have to get out of that mindset altogether. Adult, mature human beings should be able to talk about anything with anybody. Okay, I'm coming up with a few instances in my mind.
I know, me too.
Within reason, but topics having to do with health, topics having to do with religion, politics, any of that stuff nobody should fear talking about that stuff. You were mentioning about your school earlier. We shouldn't have to fear having these conversations with one another or walk on eggshells around each other and be fearful about expressing our true point of view, as long as it's done in a respectful way and calmly. I think everybody's so used to getting into these frenzied shouting matches, whether it be in all caps exchanges online or in confrontations in grocery stores or whatever, that we've forgotten that we don't have to go to that extreme. There's lots of steps before that.
Right. But discourse is vital. And I think that where we've gotten lost is the ego, because the ego would rather die than change. And so if we are entrenched in a belief system or a thought process or an idea or an ideology, then that's where we get messed up, because then it becomes about defending that as opposed to actually really absorbing or listening to what someone else is saying. Mm-hmm. You should be able to listen to what someone else's opinion is and not feel that you have to adopt it.
Tribalism feeds ego too, and we're in hyper tribalism mode right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that she said that Trump's going to win in 2024 and then he's already the president. That's amazing.
Fuck Trump, fuck Biden, fuck anybody who can make it to president as far as I'm concerned. That's what I wanted to say, but I don't feel that passionate about it. She should feel absolutely all right with supporting Trump and thinking that he's the guy for the job. I think the job is tainted. So I don't think anybody could be good for that job, because you have to compromise so much to get there. But that's another story.
I think it should be decided by a wrestling match.
For starters, yes.
I think that if you want to be a world leader, you should actually have to physically grapple with another world leader. And if you win that match, then you are allowed to be the leader of your country.
So you're talking about, that sounds more like a war, you mean candidates should wrestle?
No, I think if you want to be the president of the United States, then you have to wrestle Putin. And if you win, then you can be the president of your country.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I literally just came up with that as we were talking. I mean,
I've heard various versions.
Not the wrestling idea, but kind of how the election would be settled.
They should at least have to do a month-long silent retreat, too,
or thumb wrestle,
or a thumb wrestle. Those are almost the same thing.
Or origami.
I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you would like to get a hold of either of us for guest recommendations, many of our guests have been recommended by listeners or patrons. You can email us, we at themeltpodcast@protonmail.com or
hunter-muse@protonmail.com.
And what else do we have in store? What else do we have to say? All the links pretty much to all of the places that we are online will be in the notes of this episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got married on August the 28th.
We did, yes.
To each other.
We are no longer living in sin. To each other, yes, thank goodness. I was just about ready to marry a rhinoceros. You pulled me back from the precipice and said, I'll do it. I don't have a horn in the middle of my... I don't know what I'm saying. Let's go for a walk.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you all for listening. You are loved. I hope that you were able to glean something positive from this. And there's great stuff coming your way. Just stay tuned.
That's right. We've got some really amazing guests that we have already recorded and some amazing guests coming up. And for the rest of the year, we've got some great interviews coming. And we just really love and appreciate you. And we're just so happy that you're in our stratosphere and that we are in your stratosphere. And we just look forward to a continually amazing world. I didn't know where I was going with that. I had to just...
That was a great destination. What she said.
Right?
Ta-ta.
Bye.
To hear the full-length version of this episode, get access to exclusive and early episodes, and participate in our monthly Zoom meetups for as little as $3 per month, just click the Patreon link in the episode notes or visit patreon.com/themeltpodcast. Contributing financially will help to make this podcast my full-time gig that I can devote more time to and allow me to create more content. Other ways of contributing would be giving us a favorable review or rating wherever you get your podcasts, subscribing to us on YouTube, spreading the word wherever you and your tribe congregate, or just by sending us your positive thoughts and intentions. In a quantumly intertwined and holographic multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.